Hey, welcome to a new episode of Josh's Car Corner and the newest installment of Project Crewman. I think we're up to part 9 at this point, and as you can see, a lot has transpired since the last time I did an update about this thing. A lot of mechanical updates, wiring updates. As you can see, it's sitting on all 4 wheels again. A lot has happened in the past few weeks, so what I'm going to do is take you back in time, back to about 2 months ago, and just work forward in time to this moment right here, where you see all this beauty laid before you. Okay, we're back in my basement, and as you can see, it's still a wiring harness nightmare, but I've made a lot of good progress. The work on the front body harness is mostly complete, but in order to complete everything, I have to get digging into the engine harness, which is laid out right here. Now, if you don't remember, this is an engine harness out of a 2006 VZ SS Thunder Ute, and it was built for an automatic transmission vehicle. Which sounds good because I'm going with an automatic transmission, right? Well, the good thing is this connector for the E38 computer, that's correct. However, there are a lot of wires missing and things I'm gonna have to move around. This is all the wiring that used to go to the transmission control module that used to sit right there. These are wires for the park neutral position switch that goes on the side of a 4L60. This is the wiring for the 2 front O2 sensors, and because the pins for those sensors live on the other connector of the E38, they have to go through the body harness. So what Holden did is they took the connector that goes to the E38 and had the wires run, and I'll show you here, run from the computer all the way across the car, back into the car, all the way across the car again, out that connector and into the engine harness, then go up, then follow their path all the way down to the bottom of the car and plug in. So I'm not going to replicate that. I'm actually going to make a bridge connector between the 2 harnesses somewhere in this area right here. It'll be just like an 8-pin connector, and I'll just be able to snap together so the pins can jump from one harness to the other and don't have to run all the way around the car again. I'm not quite convinced that where these pins were for the original 4L connector are going to run long enough distance to get to the new 6L connector. So I'm probably going to end up shimming the wires I will use all the way along the harness so they're longer on this end, because I've got plenty of excess here. This is where the connector's going to live, and this is how long the wires are. So I've got plenty to work with. The other thing I'm doing is I have to run new wires for the CAN network to get it to the 6L transmission, because remember, there's no transmission controller that lives here anymore. It now lives in the transmission. So I've got 12 wires I have to get down to where they're going to plug into the transmission. 4 of them are the CAN, and then power, and then ground. And after that, there's just the new way vehicle speed sensor is done. It's actually called Vehicle Replicated Transmission Output Signal, or REPTOS for short. So instead of having 2 wires like this, it's just 1 wire, and a digital output is sent back to the ECU, and then that's what displays your speedometer and everything. And then the other thing I found out is that in this harness, the engine MAF sensor and the intake air temp sensor wiring, that's also on the other connector. So that also was on the body harness. But the way Holden did it is they had to come off the body harness in such a way that it went all the way around the car, all the way to the front of the car, under the radiator, and come back up, and then plug into the MAF sensor that lived right by the old air filter box. I have to run new wiring. It's not here. So I got to do that as well. There's also some broken connectors I have to fix. I think there was a knock sensor connector that had broken wires. The alternator wire connector is missing. So I got a little cleanup to do too. I'm probably going to have to change this connector to an updated engine oil pressure sensor. And then it's figuring out how to get the power for the transmission control module down to here, because originally the power went here. Now it has to go there. So I have to figure out if that's going to come off the body harness, or if I run it all the way around the car through this and then bring it up to here, or do I run it along the body harness computer connector and then bridge it back to the other harness and bring it back. Okay, I've been working on this for about 2 hours now. Have made some good improvements here. So the important thing is I have to run the CAN network over to the transmission. So the thing is with CAN, you need twisted wires because they cancel out electromagnetic interferences. Because this is so many digital pulses, you need a clean signal or you just have problems. So I've got a pair that's going to go to the transmission, a pair that's going to go back from the transmission. Then we've got, these are just other wires. This one runs, this is powers like sensors and stuff. This one powers something. I can't remember right now. But the other good thing I found out is that the transmission and the TCM were getting power from the same common wire that comes from that plug, which connects to the front body harness where it comes up from the radiator right next to the AC condenser sensor, the AC pressure sensor. So I've actually got that power right here. It actually has got a little junction right here where it tees and goes multiple directions. So comes in, and then one wire was going back this way, and then the other wire was going to the transmission. So what I did is I took the wire that was going to the TCM old position, pulled it all the way back out, ran it out here, and now it's living out there. And then we've still got this wire that gets there, but it's a little shorter. Now, the TCM only needs one power wire to run, but it's got two power wire inputs. So I'm probably going to just wire both off because they're coming off of the same common. And it's a 15 amp circuit that's dedicated to the transmission. So there's no way I'm going to draw 15 amps out of both of those. So I'm probably just going to wire them both up. The other one, this is the big ground that used to go to the TCM in its old in the car position. I ran it all the way over here. So now I've got 6 wires here that I need. I needed 12. It's going to go up to 13 because I'm going to add another power wire. I've still got 7 more wires that I've got to get over here. Now some of them are already laying right here, and I just have to lengthen them from the other side over here and pull them back. And then once I've got all those, I can pin the transmission connector for this side. I'm going to leave some extra length. I'm not convinced this is long enough. I'm going to try to make it a few inches longer. The way this is going right now, I can make it at least 9 inches longer, almost a foot. Probably don't need that much either, but as much length as I can get out of those is how long I'll make it, just to make sure it's long enough. Okay, progress. So the transmission end is all done. I've pinned everything out. This is a brand new connector. I've got all the pins installed. Very happy with how this side has turned out. And I was able to get about another 6 inches of length out of all the wiring. So this thing should have no problem getting to the plug on the transmission and getting in there. Still got some work to do up here to put all this together. And because I still got to add some wiring for the MAF and the temp sensor, not quite done here. And I still got to figure out what everything on this end is doing and where it's all got to go, because it's not going to go back into the car. This is a good start. Looks good too. Okay, so here's the project that I am working on tonight. What you are looking at here is 2 different sets of factory lines. One of them is out of that parts GTO that I took apart. The other is the set of lines out of the Crewman. So you can tell just by the length which ones came out of the Crewman. Now what I'm hoping to accomplish is if you look right here, so the Crewman's got this single brake line that goes back to the rear brakes. And the GTO, of course, has got 2 brake lines. So what I'm hoping to do is take the lines out of here and run these both back to the back of the Crewman so I can have 4-wheel ABS. There is going to be an issue here though that I've just spotted, where as you can see, the length of these under chassis channels is different. So this is the GTO on top, this is the Crewman on the bottom. So obviously the ones on the Crewman run farther along under the chassis before they make their turn up. So these could be bent to straighten them out, or what I could do is I could just put unions right there and extend them from this point. So one way or another, that's what I'm going to end up doing. So I think I'm going to pull the 2 lines out of the GTO set and start to transplant them into this Crewman set to begin that modification. Okay, so after looking at the ABS module on the GTO, I concluded that one rear brake line has to have a large fitting and the other brake line needs to have the smaller fitting. So the lines that came on the GTO were large and small, of course, but the factory single rear line for the Crewman had the small fitting. So I repurposed that and used the one big fitting GTO brake line. And I've got them all running here. And what's funny is that the one on the outside here, this is the GTO one that got bent. This is going to be the left rear, and the original factory one is now going to be the right rear. And it's still bent to go to that silly proportioning valve. These being bent, they're not going to stay this way. They'll eventually get bent into a new shape and have fittings put on them to go to soft lines to go to the rear axle at some point. But this part is done, so now I can throw this back up somewhere and get to working on other stuff. Well, today is a big day. It's the first time the Crewman has been back on its wheels for about a year and a half now. And I am about to roll it outside so I can use that pressure washer to finally blow all of the Australian dust and dirt and grime off of it. And I can finally get this engine bay painted. Okay, it is out. It does not look like much of a car at the moment, but I'm gonna get the pressure washer out and start blasting this thing clean. Get ready for some paint in the engine bay. So as you can see, the floor harness is back out of the Crewman. And you might notice that things are a lot cleaner than they were the last time you saw it. I actually got a chance to rent a pressure washer, and I pressure washed the entire thing and blew all of the Australian dirt and dust and spider webs and cobwebs off of this thing as best as I could, and took the last few pieces off. And then I finally got to work painting the engine bay, and here is the new color of the Crewman. This is a color that you will find here in the States on the Chevy Sonic, which is a compact car. They call it Dragon Green. And I wanted to get the engine bay painted because once I started putting in the engine and everything, I knew I wasn't going to get an opportunity to paint it again, or it would have been way too difficult. So it's not the best work because I did it with rattle cans, but it's good enough for an engine bay, and it's just done with a satin clear because I didn't want it to be shiny. That's not the way the factory would have done it. And I have started putting things back in, like I've got the hood spring in and the thing for the hood open switch. Put these things back in. ECU mount. There will be a new cradle to go in here because the bolt holes for the control arm on this side are all jacked up, and it wouldn't be any good. So I'm getting a new front cradle powder coated, and that will go in once everything is ready to go, and then I'll set the engine on that and put it all together. And you can see right here that the bed for the Crewman, I've taken it down and I've tipped it on its end, and I'm literally using it for storage now because I had to get it out of the way when I pressure washed everything. So the hard lid is sitting back here, other pieces are sitting underneath and back here too. I cannot wait to start getting all of these things into the car. It's going to be a process. First thing that has to happen is, once the front body harness is done, to put it back in the firewall. So if you remember, when I took the firewall out, there is this section of the firewall right here. See this section? That's a little metal tab that pulls out. You have to pull that out in order to slot the whole front body harness into the firewall, and then you push it back into place. And then once that's in and the firewall is in, you cannot remove the front body harness again. So I have to put that back in first and loop it all over the firewall. Then the firewall will get set in, and it's going to be glued back in. Apparently what you use is windshield urethane, so it'll set up nice and hard but still have some flexibility. So it'll get glued back in, and once it's glued back in, it's never coming out again. And I can finally start putting things back on the dash, along with assembling the engine bay, and then assembly is going to start happening on this thing real fast. So this right here is pretty exciting. This is the reconfigured and just about complete engine harness for the Crewman. So I had to make a lot of modifications. If you remember, I was talking about adding a bridge connector. Here it is. So this is going to live here, and I'll show you in a second what it's going to tie into. Couple little more things I have to do. This is going to be the main ECU ground. It has to also go through this connector. It's going to run to this position right here where there's already an existing star washer. That's a main ground point. It's just going to lay on the same bolt. I had to retape everything and add a ton of wires, remove a ton of wires, and I'm trying to put all of the factory brackets back on the way they were initially. I had to add some things down here. So this is the connector for the MAF and the intake air temp sensor. This wasn't here at all because if you remember, the way the Ute did it, it went down the body harness. So I had to add it here. And I also added here, just for potential future use, this would be for an oil temperature sensor if I can ever figure out how to get the OS to start putting the data on the can for one. This is a new alternator connector wire. This was all cut off and it used to stop right about there. And then down here, you saw this before, the completed 6L80 connector plug. And then up here, I just had to replace a bunch of spiral loom that had all cracked and degraded and come apart. There was one thing that was broken down here. It was the knock sensor. This connection right here, one of these wires was broken. Just had to redo that connection, which was really easy because that end pulls off. You can put new connectors on. They're the same as the connectors for this thing. So that was an easy fix. So this is 95% done. Just got to add a couple more pieces of loom to protect stuff and tape it and add that wire. And this is done. Over here, this is pretty much complete as well. I have one wire here that I found out recently I might be able to use. I found out that this is a line that would activate a reverse relay for backup lights that I might be able to use. I will find out once I actually get it in the car and have power to it, because if I can get 12 volts on here when it's in reverse, it can make doing reverse lights different and better. There is one wire right here. This is got to go to a ground pin on here that's already populated. So I just have to splice that wire to the same pin that it's a sensor ground. And then up here, this is where I have replaced the old body harness connector with the new connector that will go on the E38. This is a wire I'm not going to end up using. This is the other half of the bridge connector from over there. So this will go to the other harness, the engine harness, and tie the things I need from this connector to go over to the engine harness and on that connector. And again, this is almost done. And as soon as it's done, it is going back in the firewall. Okay, the big moment is finally come. We are getting ready to put the firewall in the car. My buddy Chris is here to help me because it's just going to make it a heck of a lot easier lifting this thing in once the glue is set. Say hi, Chris.
Hello.
Hey, he's got some cool cars, which you will see on a future episode someday. But we've already mocked the firewall in to see how smoothly we can get it in here. And I already ran into an issue where I had a lip right here that was not falling into the channel, and I had to relift my corner and get it reset. So I'm just going to keep an eye out for that when we go to put this thing in for real, because we get one shot at this. Once the glue's in here, we've got about 5 minutes to get this thing in here and set before the glue starts to harden. So I'm going to get set up here to get ready to start applying the glue, and then we're going to rush and smoothly drop this thing in here. And then if we get it in just right, she's in, we'll bolt it, and finally I can start putting this thing back together.
And I suppose at the factory they probably got a pneumatic type gun or whatnot that just zooms right along.
I'm sure they have a gun that goes all the way around the perimeter of the thing and just does it in one pass real quick like. And
yep.
What's funny is the G8s and the SSs, they aren't built like this. They actually have a steel firewall that's spot welded in.
Okay.
So they just changed the production process. So I'm sure on the assembly line they just spot it weld in, right hand drive firewall, left hand drive firewall, instead of gluing it in.
Right.
But I think this is this way because this is how it was originally done in Europe, because this was a European design or platform.
Okay.
Before it was an Australian platform.
So is that the Vauxhall?
Yep. So this was sold in Europe in a lot of different guises, but the most common one was the Omega, the Vauxhall Omega or the Opel Omega.
Yep.
That was a 4-door sedan. It was always a 4-door sedan until Holden turned it into a coupe. And then after they turned it into a coupe, they turned it into a Ute. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it. They turned it into a Ute before they turned it into a coupe. But this platform, the V platform, goes all the way back to the 1970s. I think the first iteration of it was like 1974 or 75. And then it's just been 30 years of upgrades and adaptation since then.
Sure.
It's actually, if you look underneath, like the GTO, the rear axle and the diff and everything that's in there, it's very reminiscent of the first generation BMW M5.
Okay.
Oh, I think I'm running out. It's either that or my hands are just getting tired.
I can get is ready.
Okay, yeah, you want to poke a hole in the other one? Yeah, this is running out. This is out.
Okay.
Okay. Yep, you do need to. Okay.
Right here, before you go.
Yep.
Maybe an extra squirt, I don't know.
Where's that?
Right in that corner there, just a little
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah, I got
You
you.
hit it a little bit, but
It's kind of, yeah, it gets tight there, and all that's really in there is the metal. A little more right there.
not to overrule you, but just trying to be a second set of eyes.
That's okay if it runs over, because I'd rather there be too much than not enough. Okay.
Right, replacement.
In placement. All right. Now I just got to make sure that same thing doesn't happen again. Okay, mine's pretty lined up.
That's looking good.
Okay. Here we're gonna have to push it through the glue this time. Okay, and then we should be able to use the bolts to hold it in. If they go in, we're down low enough. The inside one seems to be going in. Okay, I got my inside practically threaded in. Okay, well this is still soft. I'm gonna fill in back here.
Yeah, I kind of figured right where at the end where the A-pillar comes down,
Yep.
that would be a good spot because the water would rush into this corner.
That's where I had the most glue to scrape out the last time, or when I took this out. I've had to take two of these firewalls out now. Because I had to take the one, this GTO one, I had to take it out of the front cut I bought. Then I had to take the one out of this thing. Because putting them in, easy. Taking them out, oh my God, that's hard. I've got a jack on the inside, pressing up on the firewall. I got my engine hoist on the outside, lifting up on the firewall. It's crazy. But then what's funny is, when it finally lets go, it lets go really easy.
Well, you know the adhesive works then.
Yeah.
I can see a little daylight from the inside, right in there.
Right through here?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, I can see daylight.
That's weird.
Yep.
Where's that coming from? Oh, maybe right there.
Nothing yet.
No, you can still see it?
Yep. I don't know. You want to look, but you can definitely see light.
Oh, I see. Okay, well I'll just hit from this side.
Yeah.
Okay, that works. You know what, I'm gonna check the other side.
Right.
Same
Yep.
thing. Yep.
Wow.
That's a little bit right there.
Yep.
Good eye, Chris.
You're welcome.
Considering all the things that could have gone wrong just then, that's very small.
Right.
Oh my God.
It's in.
Yes! It's starting to become a car. Oh man. Yeah, now I can take this harness and run it all down the corner, down the bottom, and back up to here, and yeah, start organizing things in there, start putting there's so many little frame pieces and parts of this that still have to go in, but man, it's a start.
Well, it's those little steps that keeps a guy motivated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and this was a big one. I mean, painting it was a big one, and getting the front end back together so it could roll was a big one, and I mean, there's still a lot. And there you have it. The firewall is now in the Crewman for good. This was a huge step, and I'm glad to finally have accomplished it. Got the front body harness in there. I'll be able to start routing it back through the front of the car and back to all the locations where it's got to drop connectors off. It's going to be a lot of good progress going forward on this thing in the coming weeks and months. So my goal is still hopefully by Labor Day to fire this thing up for the first time in God knows how long. We'll see if it happens or not. But that's going to do it for this episode of Josh's Car Corner and Project Crewman. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Like what you just saw? Let me know with a thumbs up, or by subscribing and clicking that little bell so you know when new episodes come out. And be sure to join the new Facebook group I set up too for Josh's Car Corner.
Basically, you are building the car from scratch. How do you know all the parts and pieces and where they go, and how are you finding that out?
Well, when I took what was here apart, I took a lot of pictures so I could remember.
Okay.
The great thing is, for the engine bay, I've got that too.
Oh,
I can
sure.
just,
Yeah.
okay, oh, that goes like that. Walk back over here and do it.
Yep.
So make it easy. These are rated at tow 5,500.
No
And I've got
kidding.
the factory hitch with the Holden stickers on it and
Yeah.
everything. So the dream is that this someday tows that to the drag strip.
That
How
would be
cool
so
would that
awesome.
be? Wouldn't that be crazy?